it gets cold down here, but that's just unbelievable. Again, post Super Bowl, the whole thing, everything else. So our game plan was that Thursday night we got in, we tried to get some beers, we had the hotel, got lit up, and then we actually No, it was the following night. So that's it. Long story short, we get up. We didn't buy tickets in advance. We figured we would just scout the tickets, go to the box office if they didn't sell out, and that was basically the game plan. We kind of looked ahead there, and it didn't look, Buffalo at the time, McGillney and LaFontaine, they were doing pretty well, Rangers stuff. But we figured if we couldn't get tickets at the box office, we would just scalp them. We get up on Friday morning, we go up to the Ord, and that's a great thing, like you're saying. The Ord was just incredible, and the Maple Leafs Garden was unbelievable, and I know it was 50 years this year at the Ord, and the Sabres did a great thing where they kind of almost made the new building look like the Ord, but it was amazing to go there. So we go down the box office, whenever it was, 10, 11 in the morning, and we get tickets, and the arena's open. And as we get our tickets, we walk up to the gate, we walk in, and the Rangers are finishing up practice. So it was really awesome. So we got to go in there. The security let us in, and we got to sit up in the stands, and we kind of got to watch the end of the practice. And it really was the last bit of it. And then they got off the ice, and the security there's letting us hang out. We got pictures of us. I know I got pictures of me. We're in the penalty box at the Ord. That's when we got yelled at because we ended up getting down. We had free run of the place because the place was empty. Nobody's watching the Rangers practice, obviously, and I didn't see any other. I can't remember seeing any Ranger fan base there. But just the timing that we got there, it was the end of the practice. We get down there, so we had a run of the Ord. We get yelled at because we get down to the penalty box. Now, when we leave the Ord, by the time we get out of there, another long story short. We get to see a bunch of the Rangers leaving practice, and we got a bunch of guys' autographs. Turcotte, Kevin Lowe, just Boogaboom, a bunch of the guys we met afterwards. It was really cool. We just kind of caught them leaving the arena, and that was just a great experience, too, getting to see these guys, and that was a lot of fun. And then that was great. We had tickets to see the game. We hung out, did what we could in Buffalo. There wasn't much to do, and we did. We had a blast, just like he was saying. Sabres fans were all over us that night. We were doing the New York thing, and I'll never forget, fans were telling us to go back to New Jersey. Literally, it was just unbelievable. But we saw Sam and JD. There's footage back then. They both had blow-up football helmets, and I think it was the Giants they put on, obviously, because they won and everything else. So all that was going on. Yeah, and it was just great to be there. McGillney and LaFontaine, they lit us up. And then to wrap that night up, we went out afterwards. It was so damn cold, and all we did was wear our Ranger jerseys. We went to this local bar by the Ord afterwards. We hung out. We got in there, and sure enough, Dominic Hasek and Rob Ray and a couple of the Sabres were in there, and we're all ginked up in our Rangers jerseys, and they were just ripping us apart, busting chops. But it was so much fun. They were so cool. They all hung out with us. It was this great Buffalo bar. And like I said, a little of it's choppy because it was so long ago, and we did throw a few back. And then after we left there, we went to, I had really long hair back then. I was a metalhead, and my hair was down in my butt. So we found a rock club, and we found a band that was playing all 80s metal and stuff, early 90s rock and all that crap, and we had a blast. And my buddy Ray fell asleep. I don't know how he did this, but he got so drunk, he fell asleep leaning next to a speaker that was just like blaring, it was unbelievable. So we had great memories of that. We went back to the hotel.
So a little bit different than my 16-year-old self.
Yeah, we were tearing it up. We were trying to tear it up, hook up, all that stuff. And I just never forget how cold it was. But the game itself was a blast in terms of getting in with the Sabres fan and just being at the Ord and all that other stuff. And I think
I'm actually looking at the box score now of the game. So the Rangers went up 3-0 in the first period on two goals by Nemchinov and a goal by Graves.
Wow.
And actually, Nemchinov's first goal, assist by Gartner and Jan Eriksson.
Every time you say Gartner, I get upset.
Yeah, and then Graves' goal, which was his 21st of the season, was assisted by Phil Bourque. If you remember, Phil Bourque was on the team that year.
Yeah.
And then Chinov's second goal was assisted by Gartner again and Paul Broughton.
Crazy.
Let's see. I'm looking at the other goals. McGillney had 2.
Yeah, McGillney pulled this up.
Both assisted by LaFontaine.
Yep.
Randy Wood, who was an Islander, right? Randy Wood. He was on Buffalo at the time. He scored. Nemchinov actually ended up with a hat trick in the game. You're going to love this. His third goal was assisted by Stephen King and Mark Hardy. Love it.
Mark Hardy, baby. Love it.
Yeah. So, the Rangers ended up losing 6-4. I guess Buffalo scored an empty netter. Mike Richter was in goal. Not a great game. Actually, Hasek wasn't in goal that night. Tom Draper played goal for the Sabres that night.
Well, now I got to make sure that Hasek was on the team. Was he on the roster? So that's 93.
They're only showing the lineup, so I don't see who the backup goalie was that night.
Did he leave to? I got to look at this because he wins the cup. Hasek won the cup. No, I'm sorry. He loses to Dallas. He was on Buffalo in '99, so he probably was on that team. I vividly remember him hanging out afterwards, but I got to make sure. Like I said, I'm pretty sure he was on that roster. But go ahead, man. Keep talking. I just want to confirm that Hasek was on that roster.
Well, sure. I mean, after that game, obviously, again, I'm with the Ranger fan club trip, so we got on the bus and we headed up to Toronto, and took the bus all the way up there. Got in our hotel. Again, 16 years old, and me and my buddy, because the drinking age in Canada, again, 18. We assumed we'd be able to drink a little bit when we got up to Toronto. And actually, what I remember is, and Paulie, you probably remember this a little bit more than I do because you actually jogged my memory on it. One of the things up there, and you mentioned it before, was the Hockey Hall of Fame, which was something I guess we were going to do. But apparently it was closed that weekend, and I really don't remember that. Paulie, I guess you'll talk about that a little bit more. So we didn't go.
I got a great story about that one.
And what we ended up doing instead is we went to the old what's the baseball, what was it called at the time, Sky Dome or something, up in Toronto where the Blue Jays played.
Yeah.
And we went for lunch that day. There's a Hard Rock, or there was, in the Sky Dome back then. And I remember we went in there and everybody's drinking. And again, 16 years old. And my buddy and I thought we could sneak some drinks. So we ordered, I remember I ordered a rum and Coke. And the waiter came back, gave us the drinks. And I think the manager came out and was just like, "Can we see some ID?" And we're like, "What are you talking?" I gave him my ID. I must not even have. I don't have ID. I'm 16. It's like, "Well, you can't drink." I was like, "Oh, I thought the drinking age in Canada was 16. We almost got in trouble. Like, we almost got arrested. And everybody at the table had like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry," blah, blah, blah. I was like, "Oh, we didn't know." And it was this big whole thing.
Wow.
So we almost got in all this trouble. And we went to the game that night. And as I've mentioned on the podcast a number of times, I was a huge goalie fan way back when. I remember Felix Potvin was my guy. And I'm trying to remember if he was, you talk about Hasek, I'm trying to remember if Felix Potvin was the goalie for the Maple Leafs then. But whatever.
I'm pretty sure he was. And I just checked, and so I know I wasn't. He was definitely hanging out with it. I know he was. It was talk about a three-headed goalie monster. Dominic Hasek, Grant Fuhr, and Darren Pupa were the goaltenders on that Sabres roster.
Well, it could have been Fuhr because Fuhr played for Toronto. Fuhr was playing for Toronto.
I'm looking at that roster right now, and he might have at some point. This is crazy, man. Muckler was the head coach. I forgot. Tortorella was the assistant coach of the Sabres that year. Isn't that crazy?
That's interesting. You know what's funny, Paulie? Is there any way that Fuhr could have got traded the night before? Because he played in the Toronto game the next day.
Well, let's look it up.
I love that we're doing this right now. This is awesome. But Fuhr played, I remember, and you know who else was on that Toronto team? Glenn Anderson. And he got traded to the Rangers the next year to help him win the Cup. But we went up to the game and went to, obviously, the Maple Leafs Garden. I remember there was a guy on the trip, and the seats were so, narrow. And this guy, we had a guy who was real heavy-set guy. He didn't fit in the seat. And he had to sit on the step in the aisle because the seats were so narrow. I completely remember that. But the Rangers, unfortunately, again, lost. Paulie, terrible trip, by the way. No Messier.
I know.
The Rangers lose both games. I don't get to see Felix Potvin play, who I was hoping to see. But what was actually fun, so this whole trip, I'm trying to, get into bars and drink, and I can't get in anywhere. That night, we went back to the hotel, and the hotel bar in Toronto, me and my buddy, they let us in, and we drank all night. And we were late night. It turned into like a club. I remember on the dance floor and the strobe light and blah blah blah. I remember going back to my room, Paulie, and I threw up all night. 16 years old in Toronto, no one watching over me, throwing up in my room, and we had to leave early the next morning to get on the bus and get back. So I guess we all had wake up calls. And, after throwing up all night, I apparently called up the front desk and I was calling to make sure that my wake up call was still on, to make sure I got up, because I knew what in bad shape I was in. But apparently I called up and canceled it. Not made sure it was there. I called up and canceled it. And at whatever time, I just hear a banging on the door, and it's my buddy. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Everybody is on the bus ready to go." He goes, "We almost left you here." He's like, "They wanted to leave you here." And I quickly just grabbed all my stuff, ran down. Everybody was yelling at me on the bus. It was the most miserable trip I've ever had in my life. However long bus trip from Toronto to Manhattan, just absolutely miserable. And that's how my trip ended up. 16-year-old Kevin DeLury, trip to Buffalo and Toronto.
Awful hangover.
nobody watching over me. Again, my wife just still cannot believe that my parents allowed me to go on that trip. I can't believe it either. Again, imagine being 16 years old, 2 Ranger games, no parents, nobody looking. Again, the person looking over me, the person in charge of me, was a 21-year-old and was basically out drinking I barely even saw the guy. He was out, doing whatever he was doing the entire time. It's not like he was really looking over me, over what we were doing. So just an absolutely amazing trip. So much fun. I tell that story about that road trip like all the time, because it's again amazing that my parents allowed me to do it, and B, it was just such a fun time and such a fun thing. I don't even know if do the Rangers even have that? Do they even have a fan club anymore that does those kind of trips?
I don't know.
I don't even know.
I haven't looked into that in a while. I have no idea.
If they do, they don't promote it, because it's not like you see any type of commercials for it or anything. So, but just such a fun time. And Paul, you'll get into your sort of second leg of the trip. But I just find it so just amazing that the two of us are on that trip. Like, not together, but the two of us went on that. And it's just so funny that we were randomly talking about it, at the end of the show last week off the air. And that we were like, wait, I was on the trip. I was there. It's just so amazing and so like hysterical that you almost can't even make it up.
No, you can't. I mean, me and just everybody listening, me and you were just like, are you kidding me? Because we were adding up the time, the dates, the teams, who they were playing, the fact that it was, like I said, Buffalo and Toronto on back-to-back nights, lining this whole thing up. It's crazy, Like I said, you were on a bus heading up, and we were flying up. It's just the age difference. It's crazy. Because full circle now, me and you doing this show together and obviously knowing each other through, the sports biz over the last 10 years or whatever. But that's just insane. And just to confirm, Grant Fuhr was on the Leafs. He was. Okay. I was looking at the total year 92-93 for the whole season for the Sabres as far as their roster. The Leafs traded Fuhr to Buffalo.
There you go.
On February 2nd, which is like the following week. So he played. Oh,
so Toronto traded him to Buffalo.
Yes.
Afterward, got it.
Yes, for Andreychuk and Pupa. Darren Pupa. Crazy.
Darren Pupa. That's so funny.
Crazy. So getting back to the Hockey Hall of Fame, that was one of the main reasons that we were doing this trip, too. We kind of looked at it, this great weekend, go up there, and a big part of it, too, is we're going